kill the music for now. Keep the doodles coming. I see a pig showing face there. I love it. All right, June, anything at all before we kickstart? I'm ready to go.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I have been talking about butter nonstop, the last few weeks, and today has finally come. So I'm really excited to have Anamaria to actually show us what the tool is like. I'm not going to blab so much. I'm going to hand over the floor. Anamaria, maybe you can do. I'm really terrible with introductions. I tell everybody this. And so I'm going to hand over the mic to you and you can do your introduction, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Anamaria. I am building communities. That's what I do. I'm also a facilitator, a learning experience designer. I work at Butter. It's the tool that we're currently in. And we're going to spend the next hour and so talking about virtual sessions. Keep the drawings coming. I absolutely love the creativity. That was one of the things I missed the most. Flip charts. When we moved from offline to virtual sessions, I was like, where do we draw? Where are my markers? Where are my sticky notes and the flip charts and the drawings? Great. So now that we've got this, I'll close the flip charts. Sorry about that. Now that everyone's really going at it. And I'm very keen to hear whether you already know Butter or not, or this is the first time in the tool. And what you see on the screen are these flashcards that you can stamp on. Okay, so we've got some people that know what Butter is. We've got some people, hi Timothy, looking at you, that are here for the first time. Welcome. This is just a super brief intro of the tool and how you can engage with it throughout the session today. First of all, we've got these emojis that you can use at any given time throughout the sessions. They don't make sound, they just float around. Feel free to use them as much as you want. All of your controls are on the left side of the screen. We've got the queue. This is your way to add a comment, ask a question, etc. It's your virtual way to raise a hand and say, I want to chat, I want to talk, and we're managing that. Then we've got the chat. Head over to the chat and do let me know, where are you tuning in from today? And maybe what you do, like what do you do for work? What is your role? Are you facilitating? Are you leading a team? What occupies your time? And you find the chat as well to the left side of the screen. Lisbon, beautiful. I sit in Amsterdam. I'm Romanian, but I'm based in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. So that's where I'm tuning in from. It's a sunny day as well. Hamburg, Timothy, beautiful, lived in Germany for a while. So it's great to see another German in the room. Well, another, I'm not German, but a German in the room. Then the notes, you are free to take collective notes if we want to take takeaways from the session, or if you click on that button, you will toggle to private notes, and those are for your eyes only. Then we have a hotkey for muting, and then we have a hotkey for video that you can press at any time to close and open your video. And here's what's going to happen in the next hour. We are going to go through a couple of basic facilitation tips that we can bring in our engaging in our sessions. I don't know if you're hosting workshops, maybe you're hosting meetings, trainings, etc. No matter the use case, when you're bringing people together, these are a couple of useful tips that I've learned from other smaller people that I always like to bring into my sessions. And we're going to look at plenty of examples and learning by immersion. So we're going to learn by doing. I drop a couple of links in the chat for you to explore. They're all about Butter, so feel free to have a look in case you're curious about the tool. But this session today, it's not about the tool. It's about the craft and the art of facilitation. So here's my first question to you. This is a poll that opens up on your screen. All you have to do is type your answer and click share, submit. What is the best virtual experience you've had so far And what made it special? What was it? Just keen to hear a couple of elements from your experience. What made a virtual experience special? And remember to submit after you're typing. Or click send, not typing, it's submit. Submit your answer. All right. So we can already identify a couple of elements here that are helping us create special, engaging virtual experience. Interaction, communicating with each other, with your participants, with the facilitator. Autonomy within the virtual experience. I love that. Not a lot of people bring that up. I think that's a beautiful, important ingredient for adult learning in general. L&D meetup last year and all the interactions we did during the session made it more fun than a regular meeting. Okay, I'm here to hear more about that and we can explore examples next. Ending the poll. Thank you so much for playing with me. And I basically going to frame all my thoughts around facilitation one-on-one, the basics around this framework that I have learned from Hyper Island. It's called the Launching, Exploring, and Landing Facilitation Framework. And there's so much more to say about facilitation. It's a craft that people spend years to perfect. This does not mean that we cannot start to think about and get a couple of tips and tricks on how to improve our sessions. And welcome to Andrea, who's joining us now. You're right on time. So the launch is the start of the session. The explore is what's happening during the session, within the session. And the landing is how are we closing the session, the virtual session. And again, I'm talking about trainings. I'm talking about workshops, meetings, etc. No matter the purpose. So let's deep dive into this launch. If you have an opportunity to connect with your audience, the team, the people you're going to bring together before the session, remember that the launching starts before the session starts. The launch is the kicking off the session. It sets the tone for the entire workshop. So usually you will want a very strong launch at the beginning to kick it off. Is this going to be an engaging session? Invite people to do something straight away. Is this going to be a reflective session? Maybe you want to start with a grounding meditation to bring everyone, center them in the room. Make sure you cover why are we here? What is expecting us in the next hour while we're spending together? What are we going to do? What is the mood in the room? Take the temperature, see how is everyone arriving. And also the opening or the launch creates this trusting environment, open environment where participants are invited and feel welcome to contribute, to make their voice heard, bring their ideas, insights, questions, etc. Now, my tip would be to not start with the slides. Very often, I see that we're gathering people, we're bringing the slides up. It's usually a slide with our face. Who am I? What am I doing? All of my achievements, all of my badges. I show everyone how cool I am, how awesome I am. That's a missed opportunity to actually engage, ask people to do something, invite contributions as early as possible. Today, I waited for you all with a virtual flip chart. You had the opportunity to draw, you landed in the session, there was music. There was an atmosphere of invitation to pick up a virtual pen and draw something. That sends the idea and the message. I am a participant in this session. I am contributing to the session. My ideas, my insights are welcomed here. So make your participants feel seen. Then we're using a lot of check-ins or hot starts activities. And I have a couple of examples afterwards to go through. These are some of my favorite ones. Check-in is just a way to equalize the room, take the room temperature if you want. We can talk about emotions, we can talk about something really fun, etc. And a hot start, and it's called a hot start because it's an activity that we bring in the session at the beginning to prime participants' brain to start already thinking about the topic of the session. So a hot start would always be somehow linked with the goal, the purpose of the meeting we're having. Clear agenda, why are we here? What are we going to learn? House rules. And the house rules are all of these, the mini intro that we did at the beginning. If you want to ask a question, click the Q button, or you can ask it in the chat. Can you unmute? Tell the participants how is it expected for them to contribute? Should they only use the chat? Should they unmute? Can they unmute at any time? Will you take questions at the end? Bring in those expectations of interaction, because if I know how I'm expected to interact, I will do so. Otherwise, I might be like, I don't know, can I talk? Should I use the chat? No one is using anything. No one's saying anything in the chat. Is that safe for me to expose myself? So what we want is create that container space or of safe rules for engagement. And then it's also this challenge that I always take up on myself. We are confined to this two-dimensional space. Who knows now, maybe with the new Apple goggles, if you've seen that, maybe the future is looking a bit more immersive. Maybe in 2-3 years from now, we'll be able to use our space. But ever since we moved online, we don't use the space. We do not move around the room, whereas in offline, that was an element that it was at our disposal as facilitators. So my question is always, how do we challenge ourselves to bring in this multi-sensory experience? Because right now what we do is we see and we hear and we talk. Can we touch something? Can we invite people to touch something? Can we talk about smells? Can we talk about music? How do we bring in that immersion beyond the screen? So this is my tips when it comes to the launching of our sessions. I brought a couple of examples, as I mentioned, of check-ins, hot starts, and ways that I really like to kick off, whether those are workshop or community sessions. I'm experimenting with them all. So in bottom, we have these beautiful flashcards where people can stamp their location, their choice. I use that as a poll. I use it a lot. We're running a lot of community events. So when we have a room full of 30 people, 50 people, I always invite them, and I invite you today to click through and tell me, where are you tuning in from? Are we all in Europe? Do we have folks joining us from Asia? Good evening to those. Do we have someone joining us from the States? We know that it's morning for them. So this is a way for us to visualize who's in the room, who's in the same area, what are the cultures we're bringing, is it morning, what time of the day is it for us? So for the group, we're all in Europe, so it's afternoon for everyone, right? And that's a beautiful way to visualize who we are. We can talk about emotions that we're bringing. So think about your mood today. Which is the emoji that represents your day today? It's 4 in the afternoon or 3 o'clock. How was today like for you? Was it a bit silly for Timothy? I see that June Ann and Andrea were like, I'm cool, it was a good day. Eric was like, cool, I almost want to place myself here on the crying because the day flew by, and I'm like, it's 4. My to-do list is still there. This is a way to gauge emotions. And if you're meeting people at the same type of people, the same group of people, whether that's your team, I could invite some voices in the room to share. So I could be, oh, Timothy, why are you feeling silly? What happened today? Would you mind sharing an example of what made you feel that way, for example? Another example, this is just a silly check-in. What's your goat mood today? So what goat represents your mood? So again, it's a funny way. This can be cats, it can be dogs. It's a way to invite that looseness. And also you're seeing the silly faces and you're thinking, okay, maybe Anamaria, like we're not taking ourselves too serious here. We're allowed to bring our full selves, make a little joke, talk about silly things. It's not all about polished perfection and business suits, right? This sets the tone of the session. Then a hot start, remember I mentioned, this is a way to actually link the beginning of the session and the takeoff, to link it with the meat of the session, the goal of the session, and why we're meeting there. It gets participants' juices flowing to think about the topic. So because today we're talking about virtual sessions and engagement, I linked all these hot starts with the topic of today's meeting session. So how confident are you when hosting a virtual session? This is like a scale of confidence. Am I a baby ninja? I'm not really confident. I'm like, starting to crawl when it comes to virtual engagement. Or am I the absolute deadliest ninja alive? So here we are on this scale. Take yourself and place yourself on the on the scale. Are you the baby ninja, somewhere in the middle? Or are you the deadliest ninja alive? Where are we? Again, no matter the topic you're talking about, I want to see, are people familiar with the topic? I'm learning something about my audience. Are they familiar? Should I go really in depth because they're almost all at the top of the ladder so I can bring in like my deep expertise of the topic? Or are we rather towards the baby ninja and I can stick a bit to the basics? So this is another way to help you out, tweak, tailor your content to the expertise of the folks in the room. Another activity I'd like to play, and this one is coming from the offline world, where you will ask people, move to your right if you strongly agree with this, and move to your left if you disagree with what I'm saying, right? It's the same in the virtual space. Virtual events can be fun, engaging, and impactful. That is a statement. Do you strongly agree or do you strongly disagree with it? And where do you place yourself on that continuum? So I can bring this thought-provoking, impactful statements, questions, prompts, and then again invite people. If you would be at the two continuums, I would be like, okay, someone from strongly disagree, Anamaria, would you mind telling us why do you strongly disagree? Again, hearing the voices, hearing some perspectives, have people already start to think about the topic that we're covering today. And then a couple of examples for connection before content. And I bring this a lot in community sessions where we want people to also not just learn, but we want to get them a bit closer to each other. So here's an example that I absolutely love. I call this treasure hunt. I bring a couple of prompts and I ask people, remember that multi-sensory experience? I ask them, move around, turn around, look at your desk and find something shiny. So I invite you all to have a look around and see, what is it, something shiny that you have around you? Is it your pocket, your key? What is there, something shiny, something sparkly, something that shines at your desk? So take that object, bring it to the camera. So what is that, Junan? Unmute. Tell us what it is.
It's a coin.
It's a coin. That shines. All right, cool. Andrea, what do you have there? You can unmute and let us know.
It's
yes.
This pen. Yeah, my pen has the silver shiny part on top.
There we go. Beautiful. I love the color. And Eric, what did you have? You were like inspired by Junan. It was like, I also have a coin.
Something else in mind, but that's too hard to explain. So,
for example, and then you pick the easy choice. So this is a way for us to go ahead and turn around, and whatever objects people are finding, look in the room and say, oh, what is that thing that Anamaria is holding? I'm curious. Tell us what that is. Where did you got it? What's the story behind, right? And I can go ahead and I can be like, find something that brings you joy. Look around. What is it? What is something in your space that brings you joy? So I can bring my flowers. I like to work surrounded by flash flowers. What is something that brings you joy? Is it? There we go. Andrea brings her glasses. Andrea, tell us about them.
The day is so sunny. And I'm loving spending time outdoors, with my sunglasses.
There we go. Time outdoors. Eric, what do you have? He's looking for something still. Junan.
I have several books in here.
Several books and building a second brain. I absolutely love it. That's still a challenge for me.
This is a very
it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, but it's really good. And Eric, what was that? Like, tell us about that. Why is that? How do you call that? Why does it bring you joy?
It's a pair of pliers, and it's quite handy. I'm currently a handyman, so.
All right, perfect. So now we are here sharing our things, etc. And when you have a big group, these things are not, you don't notice this thing. But we see that Timothy has his camera off, which is absolutely allowed to. That's perfectly fine. So how do we involve Timothy in this conversation when we're all showing things to the camera? Well, we can invite him to go over to the chat and pick a GIF of something that brings him joy. So go to the chat, Timothy, click on the GIF icon, type in your things, and let us know what is one thing that brings you joy, right? So always try to think of ways how to involve everyone, even if it's in a different shape of, they don't have to have their camera on. And then another thing there we go, cycling. Thank you so much. That's what brings him joy. So now we learned something about each other. We're a bit closer. It's connection before content. And an absolute favorite of mine is as well, they turn to your neighbor. I've learned this from Miriam Hatness. She starts every session pairing people in breakouts. That's what it is. It's no introduction, no slides, no nada. She welcomes people and says, remember when we were going to conferences, offline meetings, networking events, etc.? What would you do? You would land in a room full of strangers. You would sit down. You would turn to the person in the chair next to you, and you would turn to the other person to your right and to your left. And you would put in their hand and say, hey, my name's Anamaria. Who are you? My name's Eric. Nice to meet you. What do you do for work, etc. So that's the connection before content. And in the virtual space, we don't have that. So she starts every single session pairing people in breakouts, gives them an interesting conversation prompt, and sends them away to talk for 3 minutes. And suddenly you have another friend in the room. All right, so these were a couple of examples that I like to use. I've learned from others as well that I bring into my sessions to really set us up for success. So here's what we're doing. We are stopping for a second before we move to the exploring. So I want us to sit a little bit with our thoughts. I'm also bringing in a, do you know liberating structure? Anyone familiar with it? Give me a thumbs up if that rings a bell, what those are. Liberating structures. Timothy says no around the room. Perfect, because that gives me the option to introduce you to something new. It's a toolbox of methods that anyone can bring. They're free to use by anyone. And it's a full-blown description activity of how you can involve even larger groups of people into the conversation. So we're going to play today with one liberating structure that is called 1, 2, 4, all. This is an easy way to capture the thoughts of everyone in the room, and it doesn't matter if we're now 5 people or if you're 500. These structures are made to scale. Okay, so here's what we'll do. I'll set a timer for 1 minute. Everyone goes to the notes icon to the left, click on that pen that you see below the chat. And once you're in the notes, go to the top right of the shared notes and toggle that down until you find private notes with a tiny little lock on in front. Hey, Wendy, welcome. Hey. So we have the notes to the right side. We toggled, we're in our private notes. Private notes are for your eyes only. We're taking 1 minute on the clock, and I want you to reflect and take a couple of notes on what concrete actions are we doing right now to make our event special. I'm talking about the event. You can say meeting, my gatherings, my calls, whatever it is you're doing online, gathering people. What is it that you're doing right now to make it special, impactful, memorable, to make it a good time, a time well invested? Take 1 minute, and then I'll come up with the next steps. We are in our private notes. Let's go. So what we are doing, we're taking a minute to think of concrete things we're doing right now to bring a bit of more impact, fun, special sparkle into our sessions, meetings, workshops, trainings, etc. My timer doesn't want to play with me today. That's okay. All right. So I hope you were able to jot 1 or 2 thoughts down. We don't have to go super deep here. Now, this was the one in the 1, 2 for all. This was the 1 minute to gather our thoughts. And this is in general a really good trick. Whenever we ask a question around the room, who tends to speak up? Feel free to unmute and let me know. Who speaks up when you ask a question around the room? This is a question. Who replies?
The talkers. Oh, sorry.
Talkers? No one.
The extroverts.
The extroverts, the talkers, the chatty ones, the people that talk to think. I'm a talker to thinker. I start talking and then I'll see where this leads me. Who's the person that needs to think before talking? Raise a hand. If you have to think before talking, there we go. So if I ask a question and I do not give people the opportunity to gather their thoughts, I will only give a fair chance of contribution to the extroverts and the chatty ones. So that's why the 1, 2 for all says, no, we even the playing field, everyone gets a minute of silent reflection to gather their thoughts. And the 2 in the 1, 2 for all, it's a paired breakout. So we put people together and they get the opportunity to share their thoughts. So that's what we're doing now. That breakout, it's a breakout of 6 minutes. We're going to be in pairs for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to couple you all for the next 4 minutes. So we are 2 minutes in pairs, and then the magic will happen in the background, and you will all land in the breakout room. And here's what we have to do. In pairs, you're sharing your thoughts, your notes to the question, what are we doing now to make our events impactful, special, memorable, effective, etc.? The thoughts that you jotted down. When you're moving into the force, try to find commonalities. Find commonalities between the 2 groups. And when we're back, be ready to share 1 or 2 things that surfaced for you. Okay? Pairs, we share. Groups of 4, we find commonalities. We're ready to share it back in plenum. Any questions before we experiment with breakouts? 6 minutes in, and after 2 minutes, you're going to be paired. Yes.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, let's go. Have fun. Hello, Rush.
Here we go.
All right.
And we're back.
And we're back. That was fast.
It was.
So the structure actually tells, we're sometimes tempted to be like, let's do, instead of 1 to 4 minutes, let's do 5, 10, 20 minutes, just give people more time. The structure says no, actually the time limitation forces us to go deep really fast. If you need more time, you do another round. You know, another one, another 2, another 4. You can do a string of 3 or 4 or 5 when you need to explore and get deeper into the thoughts, but do not increase the time. All right. Yes, Wendy.
So, how do you manage an agenda with that idea? I feel like our agendas are so full that adding in that extra multiple rounds would throw things off. I mean, to have to build that in is
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. And sometimes it depends. You could do a bit of a ballpark based on the topic. Is this a tough to digest topic? Is this a topic where people are very vocal? We would have a lot of opinions. We would need more time generally. The one we experimented with today is really easy, low hanging, but where the stakes are really high and we need to land on something and decide on something, then I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm going to just plan for 3 rounds. And then, and this is really hard, and I'm challenged with that even today, looking at the clock, buffer time. Buffer time, that's the thing we can do. Or another idea would be to give, I don't know if you're used to working async, do the whole reflection moment asynchronously in a Miro board, individual reflection, and then only do the 2 and the 4s, 2, 4, 2, 4, where you're synchronous. So you give people more time to kind of gather their thoughts, more than a minute. Those are the things that come to mind right now. Might be missing something, but this is what I would do. Okay, what have you landed on? I want to hear some voices. 1, 2 things. What is it that you're already doing to spice up your sessions?
Wendy had a good one.
Okay, Wendy. Then the ball was thrown in your court. Hey,
It was definitely thrown.
want to catch it? Yeah. If not, it's in your face. So tell us.
I was just sharing that most of the online virtual stuff that we do is training. So one of the tools that we use is one of the folks that I facilitate with, her and I love to laugh with one another. We're constantly sharing jokes with one another. So we brought that into our classroom. So this week we teach Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday night's homework is for everyone to bring jokes and memes to share throughout the rest of the week. So at breaks, when they return from, a breakout session, we encourage them. Actually, I didn't tell the rest of you. We encourage them when they enter the breakout room to share a joke. So it kind of starts the breakout even with something funny before they move into the work that they've been assigned to do.
I love that. This is a little ritual that you're creating. It's a team ritual almost. So people are like, oh, what's my joke today? What is my meme today? What do I share that it's funny today? Love that. Beautiful. Thanks a lot. I love to sit here and just explore. But time is not our friend. So I'll move us on to the second part of our framework, and that's the Explore framework. So we launched it, and what we just did now with the 1, 2 for all, we explored the topic. We set in with the work to be done. And the goals here is to keep everyone equally involved. So again, can everyone contribute? Can everyone unmute and share? Do we invite Timothy to share in the chat? Do we have a Miro board with sticky notes? Can they also share? How do we make sure that everyone's included? How do we make sure that extroverts and introverts equally have the opportunity to make their thoughts heard? How do we manage the energy? And we can enter into a couple of examples there as well. Is this thing working, especially when you're gathering people to take decisions, to land on something, to work on something, to collaborate on something? You start the session, and very often you're like, after a while, it's like, oh, we're diverted. Like, are we really making progress towards that goal? Is this thing working, or do we have to stop for a second in order to make progress and look at the process that we're going through? And also shifting this between the process and the participants. And that's a little bit what Wendy was saying, this challenge that we constantly have to, if the conversation's really on, at which point do I cut it because I have an agenda and I need to get somewhere? And at which point do I let it flow? And how skilled am I later on to know which are the things that can be left outside in order to still finish at time and land on the goal, because we're meeting with a purpose. So in here, a couple of tips or tricks that I've learned from other smarter minds are this: minding the interface or the space we're bringing the people in, bringing the right tools. And I always look at design first, and then I pick the tools. And other people are like, I have this cool tool, so how can I use this cool tool in my session? I'm like, that's not the point. What do you want to do? And then find the tools to support that. Design for conversation and connection as well. Use this variety of formats. I can have a panel, I can have a quick Q&A, I can have Fishbowl, World Cafe, Lean Coffee, 1, 2 for all, liberating structures. There are tons. And if June is interested, I can share a couple of links for y'all to explore afterwards. There are plenty of tools out there. Add some variety. So when I'm exploring, and this is just an hour session, it's really short, but sometimes we have workshops of 3 hours. How do I know how to bring in energy up when we need to brainstorm? How do I tone it down when we need to center and kind of take a decision? What do I do after breaks? Where do I plan in the breaks? How do I use the silence versus the talking? Am I comfortable with silence myself? How do I mix and match individual work, silent work, thinking work with my brain, and group work, conversation, plenum discussions, and so on? Participants work more than you. That's something I've learned very early on from Daniel Steelman. And he said, if you're looking at your workshop and you're doing more work than your participants, you are doing it wrong. The facilitator is there to guide. You are not the ones doing the work. The group's the one doing the work. The team's the ones doing the work. We're the stewards. We're responsible for the process. Pulse checks. Is everyone with me? Do you agree with that? Give me a quick thumbs up. Do you have questions, etc.? So all these kind of mini small interactions, thumbs up, put me in the chat, let me know this, that, and designing for inclusivity, which is hard. It's a challenge in itself, and we would need 2 hours just to scratch the surface for that topic alone. But in here, I constantly think, do I do a quick onboarding on the tools? If you're using Miro boards or Butter, these people have never seen these tools. How do I make sure they're ready to contribute and the tool doesn't stand in the way? That's the worst thing you want to have. You put in all the flashy tools. At the end of the day, I sometimes think, can I just use the chat for that? And if the answer is yes, I'll just use the chat for that. Because what matters is not the flashy tools, it's the good prompts, thoughtful questions, the way I engaged, and the invitation that I craft for the people in the room. All right, and this is the exploring. So what I'll do next is I'll move on to the landing, and then we're experiencing the landing. So the landing is the ending. We launched, we put a lot of energy, we set the tone, we explored, we brainstormed, we sit there, we took decisions, whatever it is that we're meeting to do, and then we close. And very often when we're time pressured, this is the part we skip. And I would always, as this is a pro facilitation tool, do not skip your exit, do not skip your ending. Do you know peak moments? I think it's a book, crafting beautiful experiences. I think it's a concept that is coined in marketing, etc. Peak moments. Your start of something and the end of something is what people are most likely to remember. How do I start strong? How do I end strong? And if at the end, all I do is rush and, oh, we're so time pressured. Oh, I need to cut this or whatever. And I do not land on something properly according to the plan, I've jeopardized the whole good work that I've been doing in that session. So if you have a buffer, do not put it at the end. Put your buffer somewhere in the middle. put cut from somewhere else, cut from a theory, ditch the slide if you have to, but put in the landing. So the goals of the landing is to kind of stop a bit. It's like, oh, we spent an hour together. So what happened? What's next? What are you doing next? Do we need to take some actions? What can you implement in your work? What are we doing tomorrow? Do we need a follow-up? Feedback, evaluation. Depending on the purpose of the session, you will land on something different. Is it an action plan? Next steps? Do we need to divide responsibilities? Do we have the desired outcomes? Key takeaways, learnings? What is it? On what are we landing? Conclude, just closing the space. We might want to reflect and give feedback. So there are several things we can do here. We can use the rose turn bud, I want more of, less of, I wish, I wonder, etc. There are plenty of other tools to use to just reflect back on what happened and take some feedback away for you as a facilitator, but for us as a group as well. You have the wrap up, the checkout, and if you can end on a high energy note, create some delight, create some stickiness, maybe something unexpected, points for you. And my ultimate favorite, I'm still learning, be time pessimist. Be time pessimist in virtual sessions. This is it. This was the framework we talked about hot start. We talked about the check-ins. We talked about how do we not start with slides and we start with something interesting? How do we invite conversations early on? We talked about different formats. We played with liberating structures, ways of engaging people, breakouts, and how magical they are to keep the participants engaged. And then we landed on something. And we're still pending to land today's session. So that's what we're doing next. But before that, I invite any questions to the framework. Anything at all, anything that you have in your mind, something that you'd like to explore deeper. Any questions to the content? Okay, no questions. So here's how we're landing the session today. Our goal today was not to change the world. We didn't have to take a big decision on how to go forward, ways of working, nothing like that. We gathered for hopefully some inspiration. So my goal for today's session, did it spark something in your brains? So my checkout, my landing is, something I've learned today is, and this is an open poll for you to take a moment to reflect, type in your answer, and click submit. Open for a second, but let's just put our meta hat from learners to facilitators, right? Let's put that meta hat on. So the question I picked today for us to land is, something I've learned today is, and an open-ended poll. What are other ways to land? How else could I have landed today's session? What else could I have asked? Feel free to simply unmute and share your ideas. What else could I have asked? Where are all my extroverts?
I'm not an extrovert, but I do have a response.
Wendy, saving the day. Yay, yay, yay. All right, let's hear it.
One of the things we ask is, what will you implement immediately? That's one of the questions that we try to ask. That way we're forcing them to apply what they've learned and putting something, connecting it with something in their everyday work right away.
I love that. This makes me think of another liberating structure. It's called 15% solutions. And the invitation is, what can you do tomorrow, this week, like next, without any extra time, resources, money, with nothing changing in your context? Just the way you are, what can you do with what you have? Just that 50%. So how are you going to use this? How can you implement this? What are you committing to do? And once you do it, can you share it with a colleague, for example? So how do we create almost those accountability mini mechanisms in our sessions, at the end of our sessions? Anything else that comes to mind? And then I can share my favorite one. Now, you already told us that you're going to share something, Anamaria, so let's hear you. Okay, so here's one that I like to use, especially if you're talking, if you're working a lot on beliefs, mindsets, those juicy topics. It can be diversity, inclusion, etc., where people usually have a lot of different opinions. There's a lot to digest. And I like to land those sessions with this invitation. It's an open-ended poll, and I'd ask them to fill out the dots. And the dots are this. I used to think ... and now I think ... So before coming to I used to think that something, and now I think that blah, blah, blah. That asks people, again, forces, like Wendy says, we prompt people, we nudge people to think, how has actually my thoughts, my mental models, how did they change as a result of this time spent together? So these are just a couple of examples to work with. You can go as complex as action plans, to-dos, by whom. If we're in the team, we'd probably land on something much more concrete. But since this is a learning session, this is a great examples for landing. All right, and for the last couple of minutes, this is a riddle. Secret sauce for virtual sessions, workshops, etc. What is that sprinkle? What's the secret sauce that we put on top when we design it and when we deliver it? What do you think? What can you guess? Use the chat or just unmute to shout it out. What might be it? It's a prompt and invitation to be creative, to be fun, to be playful, inspiring, breakouts for connection, for discussion, for sparking thoughts, ideas, curiosity, excited, or can I be on the fence? If I don't feel safe enough, will this trigger, I have to go in breakouts, I have to share, I have no ideas about this thing, I don't know what this is. What will I say? Anxiety, right? We have to remember that we're different. So something that might excite me might put Andrea in a difficult spot. Something that is fun for me might feel a bit awkward for Eric, right? So account for that. And variation and methods and tools, exactly what Timothy was saying. How can I bring in enough variation, not to overwhelm, but still to pique curiosity and attention? So Anamaria, yes, facilitator is our magic. There we go. Felt open, reassurance, inspiration. Thank you very much. That was it. That was the show. And here's how I'd love to end the session. If you're all giving me a thumbs up, you're ready for an experiment. We said that we're ending the sessions on a high. So I'm like, how do we end the session on a high? And I'm simply going to use something I've learned on another facilitator, Romy Alexandra. She's amazing. And she closed one of our sessions for the Butter community with this specific activity. Are you ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. All right, everyone, let's lean into it. By the way, again, Meta hat. The moment you're opening up the group, the room to something unexpected, something like, oh, I'm not sure, will they like it or not? I'm a bit on edge. I'm a bit scared if this will come across as cool or if this will come across as, The trick is to ask the invitation and frame it as an experiment. You ready for an experiment? You ready for something new? You ready to lean into something that we haven't done before? Give me a thumbs up. So everyone's already like, what's happening? Thumbs up. I'm in this thing. So search for your phones and put in the...
My phone's not here. Hold on.
Your phone's not here. Okay. If your phone's not here, use your hand, right? So we're at the concert and we're ending this session. Timothy has his hands. If you have a phone, just like you would have it at a concert, there we go. We see the music, the lantern, the flashcard. And we're closing today's session. And this is an opening session. Feel free to enjoy the concert, the virtual concert. And it was a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you, Jinan, for the invitation. I absolutely loved it. Mighty group. And hope to see you all around. Connect on LinkedIn. Let's stay in touch.
Oh, that's true. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Anamaria. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for coming to our concert.
Thank you for coming to our concert, to the show. Enjoy. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Timothy. Have a great train ride.
Bye all.
Bye, Eric. Take care. Bye, Andrea.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I know.
Woo! Someone likes the concert.